Ma, you have to go. Now. The new bartender stopped a billionaire CEO moments before a $150 million deal. What if the person who saw through the perfect facade was someone invisible to your world? Someone who'd already lost everything by telling the truth once before? Under the crystal chandeliers of the Aurelia, Chicago's most exclusive rooftop lounge, 38-year-old Chloe Anderson smoothed the collar of her tailored Armani blazer and reviewed the merger contract one final time. The partnership agreement gleamed under ambient lighting, each clause representing years of strategic positioning. She'd transformed a startup from her college dorm room into a billion-dollar tech empire, and tonight's a $150 million deal with Vincent Leclerc would cement her legacy as one of the most powerful women in global finance. The venture capitalist would arrive any moment, ready to finalize the acquisition that would expand her company's reach across 3 continents. Chloe had war-gamed every negotiation point, stress-tested every contingency. What she couldn't have anticipated was the woman in a black service vest who would approach her table with trembling hands and whisper the words that would shatter her carefully constructed evening. Her name tag read Fiona, and her eyes held a truth that would save Chloe's empire. Fiona Moe had been working at the Aurelia for exactly 2 weeks, and she still felt like a ghost, haunting the velvet-draped world of Chicago's elite. At 32, she was older and quieter than the other bartenders, more watchful. But after her investigative journalism career imploded in a scandal that nearly got her killed, she needed this anonymous job desperately. The elegant lounge intimidated her with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering skyline and hushed conversations of billionaires negotiating empires. But she was determined to disappear into the background. Tonight felt different, though. The bar manager had positioned her behind the main counter, directly facing the private alcove where the most powerful guests conducted business. "Stay sharp," he'd instructed, adjusting his bow tie. "Chloe Anderson is here. No distractions, no mistakes." But as Fiona polished wine glasses and observed the room with trained eyes she could never fully shut off, she heard a voice that made her blood run cold. A smooth French accent she'd only heard once before, on a leaked wiretap recording that destroyed her career. And suddenly, staying invisible was no longer an option. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, let's get into it. But to understand how 6 whispered words could stop a $150 million deal, we need to rewind. Back to 6:47 p.m. that same evening, when 2 women existed in completely separate universes, until fate decided to collide them. Chloe Anderson's world was measured in milliseconds and millions. At exactly 6:47 p.m., she stood before the floor-length mirror in the Aurelia's private lounge, adjusting the diamond stud in her left ear. A gift she'd bought herself after her company's IPO made her a billionaire at 33. The reflection staring back showed a woman who'd mastered the art of control. Sleek chestnut hair pulled into a flawless low bun. Armani blazer tailored to perfection. Eyes sharp enough to dissect a balance sheet in seconds. Self-made. That's what Forbes called her in their cover story last year. But Chloe knew the real cost behind that label. The 16-hour days, the relationships sacrificed, the constant pressure of proving a woman from Southside Chicago could dominate Silicon Valley's boys' club. "Ms. Anderson, Mr. Leclerc just confirmed. He'll arrive at 7:30, her assistant Maya announced, tablet glowing with final contract revisions. Chloe nodded, her mind already 3 moves ahead. "Run the numbers one more time. Revenue projections, offshore asset transfers, tech licensing clauses. I want zero surprises tonight. This deal wasn't just about money, though $150 million was nothing to dismiss. Vincent Leclerc's European venture capital network would catapult Anderson Dynamics into global dominance. Legacy. That's what tonight represented. The pinnacle of 15 years clawing her way from a cramped garage startup to a name that made Wall Street listen. She rehearsed her opening line silently. "Vincent, let's build something that changes the world." But control is an illusion. And Chloe Anderson had no idea her world was already burning. While Chloe prepared to sign away her future, across the lounge, someone who'd already lost everything was about to recognize the man who destroyed companies for sport. Fiona Mo's world was measured in silence and survival. At 6:47 p.m., she stood behind the polished mahogany bar, methodically wiping champagne flutes until they gleamed under soft amber lighting. Her movements were precise, invisible, exactly how she needed to be. The black service vest felt like armor. The name tag reading Fiona felt like a lie, because Fiona Mo wasn't her real name. 3 years ago, she was Fiona Mosen, an investigative journalist whose exposé on a billion-dollar money laundering ring earned her a Pulitzer nomination and a death sentence. The article named names, traced offshore accounts, connected dots that powerful men paid fortunes to keep hidden. 2 weeks after publication, her brakes failed on a mountain highway. The crash should have killed her. It killed her career instead. She remembered waking in the hospital, staring at ceiling tiles as her editor delivered the devastating news. "The story's been retracted. Our sources recanted. Fiona, they're saying you fabricated everything." Lies, but lies backed by lawyers, money, and threats that made her sources disappear faster than morning fog. Within months, she became toxic, unhirable, untrustworthy, unemployable in journalism. So she vanished, changed her name, moved to Chicago, started over as the thing she'd spent years exposing, invisible labor serving the elite. The irony wasn't lost on her. I used to report on these people, she thought, watching a table of hedge fund managers laugh over $300 bottles of wine. Now I serve them. She wiped another glass, catching fragments of conversation drifting from nearby tables. Mergers, acquisitions, stock manipulation disguised as strategic positioning, the language of legalized theft. Her journalist instincts still burned beneath the quiet exterior, cataloging details she'd never write again. "Fiona, VIP section needs refills. Table 7, the bar manager instructed, nodding toward the private alcove where crystal chandeliers cast diamonds of light across white tablecloths. She loaded her tray with precision, keeping her head down. Stay invisible. Stay safe. That was the deal she'd made with herself when she took this job. No heroics. No truth-telling. Just survive. But some truths don't stay buried, and some voices, once heard, can never be forgotten. As Fiona approached table 7 with fresh champagne, she noticed the woman sitting there, poised, powerful, reviewing documents with the intensity of someone about to reshape her empire. Chloe Anderson. Even Fiona, living off-grid from the business world, recognized that face. Chloe glanced up briefly, nodded politely, the way the powerful acknowledge servants, then returned to her papers. To her, Fiona was furniture. Forgettable. Fiona set down the glasses and retreated to the bar, her hands steady, her expression neutral. But inside, something twisted. How many deals like this have I watched from the shadows, she wondered. How many sharks have I served champagne, while they devoured someone's life's work. Chloe Anderson seemed different, though. There was something in her eyes, not cruelty, but hunger. Ambition, the kind of drive that built empires or burned them down. She has no idea what's coming, Fiona thought, turning away. But neither did she. Because at exactly 7:23 p.m., a man in an expensive Italian suit would walk through the Aurelia's entrance, and Fiona's carefully constructed invisibility would shatter the moment she heard his voice. The past was about to catch up to both of them, and neither woman, the billionaire nor the bartender, was ready for what happened next. 7:23 p.m. Vincent Leclerc arrived exactly on time, because men like him always did. Precision was power, and he wielded both like weapons. Fiona was restocking wine bottles behind the bar when the lounge doors opened. She didn't look up immediately. Years of service work had taught her that anonymity was survival. But then she heard it. That voice. "Bonsoir, ma chérie. Yes, I've just arrived. The signatures will move the assets offshore immediately. By midnight, everything transfers." Fiona's hands froze mid-reach, a bottle of Chateau Margaux suspended in the air. Her pulse hammered against her throat. That accent, smooth, cultured, with a particular cadence that wrapped around vowels like silk-hiding razors. She knew that voice. 3 years ago, that same voice had appeared on a leaked audio recording that nearly cost Fiona her life. The man speaking was known only as the broker, a ghost who dismantled companies and disappeared fortunes. She'd never seen his face, until now. Her journalist instincts roared to life, despite every survival instinct screaming to stay silent. Slowly, carefully, she turned her head just enough to glimpse the man approaching Chloe's table. Tall, silver-touched hair, expensive Italian suit that probably cost more than Fiona earned in 6 months. But it was his eyes that confirmed everything. Cold, calculating, scanning the room with predatory assessment before settling into a warm, disarming smile as he greeted Chloe. "Chloe, so wonderful to finally meet in person," Vincent said, his charm flowing effortlessly as he clasped her hand. "I've been looking forward to this partnership for months." Fiona's blood turned to ice water. Partnership. That's what he called it. But she remembered the leaked recordings her source had provided. Late-night conversations where the broker described his method. Establish trust. Secure signatures. Transfer assets offshore. Then dismantle from within. By the time they realize what happened, we own everything. The companies he'd destroyed read like a graveyard of innovation. Brilliant startups gutted and sold for parts. Founders left with nothing but lawsuits and bankruptcy. She'd spent 8 months tracking his network, connecting offshore accounts, building an airtight case. And then her brakes failed on Highway 101. "You're being paranoid," a rational voice whispered in her mind. "Lots of French businessmen sound similar. You're seeing ghosts." But Fiona had learned to trust her instincts. They'd kept her alive when everything else failed. She moved closer to the bar's edge, pretending to organize cocktail napkins while straining to hear their conversation. Vincent had settled into the chair across from Chloe, a leather portfolio open between them. "The structure is quite elegant," Vincent explained, sliding documents across the table. "Your patents and proprietary technology transfer to our European holding company for tax optimization, naturally. Meanwhile, you maintain operational control initially." Initially. That word hung in the air like poison, disguised as perfume. Fiona had seen this exact playbook before. The contracts designed to look mutually beneficial until buried clauses activated. The slow-motion theft disguised as partnership. Chloe studied the documents, her sharp mind clearly working through implications. But even brilliant people had blind spots, and Vincent Leclerc specialized in exploiting them. Fiona faced an impossible choice: stay silent and keep the life she'd rebuilt, or speak up and risk everything. Again. She had 5 minutes before Chloe signed. 5 minutes to decide if one woman's empire was worth resurrecting her own ghost. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone in her apron pocket, careful to keep the motion hidden. She pulled up an old encrypted folder, files she'd sworn never to touch again, evidence she'd backed up before everything collapsed. There. A photograph from a Monaco banking conference, 3 years old. Grainy surveillance footage showing a man entering a building connected to offshore fraud. The image was partial, but the profile matched Vincent Leclerc perfectly. Then she found the audio file. Her finger hovered over the play button. What if I'm wrong? The question paralyzed her. What if I ruin an innocent man's business deal and destroy my own life for nothing? But then Vincent laughed, that same smooth, practiced charm, and Fiona's memory crystallized with brutal clarity. That laugh. She'd heard it on the recordings when the broker described how he'd eliminated a whistleblower who got too close. Her chest tightened. She zoomed in on Vincent's leather portfolio resting on the table, and her trained eye caught something that made her stomach drop. A flash drive. Sleek, expensive, with a logo etched into its silver casing, an interlocking double helix. The same encrypted emblem that appeared on documents from the broker's network. The same symbol she'd traced to a dozen shell corporations. Oh God, it's him. Fiona, table 7 needs attention, the bar manager called, snapping her back to reality. She looked up. Chloe had picked up a pen. Vincent was smiling, confident, victorious. The contract sat between them like a loaded gun. The signing would happen in less than 3 minutes. Once Chloe's signature touched that paper, $150 million would begin moving through channels designed to evaporate wealth like morning mist. And Fiona, invisible, irrelevant Fiona, was the only person in that glittering lounge who knew the truth. Her body moved before her mind fully decided. She grabbed a champagne bottle, a prop, a reason to approach the table, and started walking toward VIP Section 7. Each step felt like crossing a minefield. Her heart hammered so violently she was certain everyone could hear it. But she kept moving, kept walking, until she stood at the edge of Chloe Anderson's table, trembling with a truth that could save a billionaire or end a bartender. Vincent glanced at her with casual dismissal. Chloe didn't look up at all, focused entirely on the contract's final page. Fiona opened her mouth. Her voice barely escaped as a whisper. "Ma'am, ma'am." The word died in Fiona's throat as Vincent's cold eyes flicked toward her with the casual disdain of someone swatting away an insect. Chloe didn't even look up, her pen poised above the signature line. Fiona's courage evaporated. She set down the champagne bottle with trembling hands and retreated to the bar, her heart slamming against her ribcage like a trapped bird. Coward, she thought bitterly. You had one chance, and you froze. She needed help. Someone who'd believe her. Someone who'd understand the stakes. Marcus, a senior waiter who'd worked at the Aurelia for 12 years, was organizing dessert plates near the kitchen entrance. Fiona rushed over, keeping her voice low and urgent. "Marcus, I need your help. That man at table 7, Vincent Leclerc, I think he's running a scam. We have to warn Ms. Anderson before she signs." Marcus stopped mid-motion, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. But not the kind Fiona hoped for. "Fiona, what are you talking about?" "I'm serious. I recognized him from—" "Stop!" Marcus grabbed her elbow. pulling her further from the dining room. His voice dropped to a harsh whisper. Listen to me very carefully. We don't interrupt billionaires. We don't get involved in their business. And we sure as hell don't accuse their guests of crimes based on, what? A feeling? It's not a feeling. I have evidence. Evidence? Marcus's laugh was sharp and bitter. You've been here 2 weeks. You think anyone's going to believe the new bartender over a venture capitalist doing a $150 million deal? You'll get fired, blacklisted, maybe sued. Is that what you want? Have you ever known something terrible was about to happen, but everyone around you acted like you were crazy for seeing it? That's where Fiona stood, watching a disaster unfold in slow motion, while the world told her to stay silent. Fiona pulled her arm free. So I should just let her sign away her company? Let him destroy everything she built? Marcus's expression softened slightly, but his voice remained firm. Fiona, I don't know what happened in your past, but you can't save everyone. Sometimes the best thing you can do is keep your head down and protect yourself. He walked away, leaving Fiona alone in the hallway with the weight of an impossible choice. The clock on the wall read 7:38 p.m. Through the doorway, she could see Chloe reviewing the final page, Vincent leaning back confidently, victory already written across his face. Fiona's mind spiraled into her journalist past, a kaleidoscope of faces she'd never forget. The single mother who lost her job when Vincent's network collapsed her company. 300 employees laid off overnight while executives walked away with golden parachutes. The engineer who'd mortgaged his house to invest in a startup that Vincent's team gutted and sold for parts. Bankruptcy. Divorce. Ruin. The young CFO who tried to blow the whistle and ended up discredited, unemployable, her reputation destroyed by lawyers who specialized in burying truth under mountains of litigation. If I stay quiet, Fiona thought, her hands clenching into fists, I become part of it. Again, she'd already lost everything once trying to expose corruption. Her career, her credibility, nearly her life. And here she was, 3 years later, facing the exact same choice: silence or truth. What would you do? Imagine you're standing there, invisible to everyone who matters, holding a truth that could save someone but destroy you. Do you speak or do you survive? Through the doorway, Chloe suddenly stood, her phone pressed to her ear. Excuse me, Vincent. I need to take this. It's Tokyo. 2 minutes. She walked toward the lounge's private phone alcove, leaving Vincent alone at the table. 2 minutes. Fiona's body moved on pure instinct. She slipped through the side hallway, ducking into the empty coat check room. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone, the same encrypted device she'd kept from her journalism days, buried in a drawer for 3 years. She pulled up a browser and searched. Vincent Leclerc Venture Capital. The results were pristine, professional, polished websites showing a distinguished career, European business journals praising his innovative investment strategies, photos of him at charity galas shaking hands with politicians. Too perfect. Too clean. She searched deeper, adding terms from her old investigation. Vincent Leclerc, offshore accounts. Leclerc fraud. Leclerc corporate takeover. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He scrubbed everything, she realized. This level of digital cleansing took serious money and serious connections, the kind that erased people who asked too many questions. But Fiona had one advantage Vincent didn't know about: a contact who existed off the grid, someone who owed her a favor from the days when she'd buried a story to protect an undercover agent. Her fingers flew across the encrypted messaging app she'd sworn never to open again. She found the contact labeled only as Cipher, FBI Cyber Division, though officially this person didn't exist. She attached Vincent's photo from the Aurelia's website and typed, "Need confirmation. Is this Victor Leclerc from the 2022 Monaco investigation? Urgent." The reply came back in 11 seconds, faster than any legitimate FBI response should be. "Stay away from him. He's dangerous. How do you know where he is?" Fiona's blood turned cold. The confirmation hit like a physical blow. She typed back, "He's about to scam someone. I can stop it." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "We've been tracking him for 18 months. No solid evidence. If you interfere, you'll be exposed and he'll disappear again. Stand down." Fiona stared at the screen, her reflection ghostly in the dim light. "Stand down. Stay safe. Protect yourself." Every survival instinct screamed at her to listen. She'd rebuilt a life from ashes. She had a job, a tiny apartment, a chance at normal. Why throw it all away for a billionaire who didn't even know her name? But then she remembered the opening line of her Pulitzer-nominated article, the one that destroyed her. "Silence isn't neutrality. It's complicity dressed in cowardice." She'd written those words, believing them. If she stayed silent now, what did that make her? Through the wall, she heard Chloe's voice. "Sorry for the delay, Vincent. Where were we?" 7:42 p.m. Fiona deleted the message thread, pocketed her phone, and stepped back into the hallway. Her hands had stopped shaking. Her mind had cleared with terrible, crystalline certainty. She couldn't stop Vincent from disappearing again. She couldn't protect herself from what came next. But she could stop him from destroying Chloe Anderson tonight. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Because sometimes courage isn't about having a plan. It's about taking the step even when you know it might be your last. Fiona walked back toward table 7, her heart steady now, her purpose clear. She had less than 60 seconds before Chloe signed. 60 seconds to save a stranger's empire. 60 seconds to destroy her own life. Again. Chloe returned to the table with the confident stride of someone who'd just secured a Tokyo partnership worth $30 million. She settled into her chair, smoothed her blazer, and smiled at Vincent with the warmth of impending success. "Apologies for the interruption. Shall we finalize this?" Vincent's smile was pure charm as he slid the contract closer, the pages gleaming under crystal chandelier light. "I've been waiting months for this moment, Chloe. Your vision combined with our European infrastructure, it's going to change everything." Fiona watched from behind the bar, her pulse thundering in her ears. Chloe's fingers wrapped around the Mont Blanc pen, a gift, no doubt, celebrating some previous victory. The tip hovered above the signature line. 30 seconds, maybe less. Then Vincent leaned toward Chloe's legal advisor, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who'd been reviewing clauses throughout dinner. His voice dropped to what he thought was a whisper, but sound carried strangely in the Aurelia's acoustic design, especially to someone trained to listen. "Once she signs, we control her patents by midnight. The offshore transfer is already queued." The advisor nodded, not understanding she'd just confirmed a trap, but Fiona heard every word. Have you ever felt the exact moment when fear transforms into fury? When your body stops shaking and starts moving because staying still becomes impossible? That's what happened to Fiona. Her terror crystallized into purpose. Her feet carried her forward before her mind could sabotage the decision. Each step across the polished marble floor felt both endless and instantaneous. The ambient conversations faded to white noise. The world narrowed to one table, one woman, one pen, about to destroy everything. She reached the edge of table 7, just as the pen touched paper. "Ma'am," her voice came out hoarse, trembling, barely above a whisper. But in the sudden silence of the VIP section, it landed like a gunshot. Chloe's hand froze. She looked up, confusion flickering across her perfectly composed features. "Yes?" Fiona's chest tightened so violently she thought her ribs might crack. Every eye in the lounge had turned toward her. The maitre d' was already moving in her direction, ready to remove the waitress who'd violated the sacred rule. Never interrupt the powerful. Say it. Say it now, or lose the chance forever. You have to go. Now. The entire restaurant froze. Chloe blinked, clearly wondering if she'd misheard. Vincent's expression shifted from confusion to cold calculation in half a heartbeat. Maya, the assistant, stood abruptly. "Excuse me, what do you think you're—" "Please," Fiona's voice cracked, but she pushed through. "That man isn't who he says he is. Don't sign anything. Please." Imagine the risk she just took. Your job, your safety, your entire carefully rebuilt life. Would you burn it all down for a stranger? Would you speak when silence was safer? Chloe's confusion hardened into something sharper. She set down the pen with deliberate slowness, her CEO instincts clearly activated. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" "My name is Fiona Moe, but—" She swallowed hard, forcing out the truth she'd buried for 3 years. "It used to be Fiona Mosen. I was an investigative journalist, and I've seen what this man does to companies." Vincent's mask slipped for just a fraction of a second, a flash of recognition, of calculation, of threat assessment. Then the charm snapped back into place like a weapon being drawn. "This is absurd," he said smoothly, standing with practiced grace. "Chloe, I don't know what this woman's agenda is, but I assure you, she wrote an article." Fiona's hands shook as she pulled out her phone, scrolling frantically through her encrypted backup files. 3 years ago, about a man named Victor Leclerc who destroyed 7 companies through fraudulent mergers. I have the article. I have his photo. She found it. Her old byline, her old life, the story that nearly killed her. She turned the phone toward Chloe, her fingers trembling so badly the screen wobbled. The headline read, "The Broker: How One Man's European Investment Network Became a Billion-Dollar Fraud Machine," by Fiona Mosen, financial investigative correspondent. Below it, a surveillance photo from a Monaco banking conference. Grainy, taken from a distance, but unmistakable. Vincent Leclerc's face stared back from the screen. Chloe leaned forward, her sharp eyes scanning the article's opening paragraphs. Her expression shifted, skepticism giving way to concentration, then to something colder. She looked up at Vincent, then back at the phone, then at Vincent again. "Maya," Chloe said quietly, her voice carrying the steel of someone who'd built an empire on trusting her instincts. "Check that flash drive Vincent provided. Run a standard decryption protocol." "Chloe, this is insulting," Vincent protested, but the smoothness had cracked. His accent thickened slightly, stress bleeding through the polished veneer. "You're going to let some bartender with a conspiracy theory sabotage months of negotiations?" "I'm going to verify information before signing a $150 million contract," Chloe replied, her tone ice cold. "Maya, now." The flash drive, the one Vincent had slid so casually across the table, was about to reveal whether Fiona had just saved a billionaire or destroyed her own life for nothing. Maya pulled out a slim laptop, inserted the drive, and ran a diagnostic. The seconds stretched like hours. Fiona could feel Vincent's eyes burning into her, could sense the shift in his posture from charming businessman to something far more dangerous. The laptop screen flickered. Maya's frown deepened. "This encryption," she said slowly, her voice tight with professional alarm. "This isn't standard corporate security. This is military-grade, multi-layered, with routing protocols that—" She looked up at Chloe, genuine fear flickering across her features. "This is designed to hide something big." The air in the VIP section turned to ice. Chloe stood slowly, her movements controlled, but her eyes blazing with cold fury. She looked at Vincent, really looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time. "Who are you?" she asked, each word sharp as a blade. Vincent's smile never wavered, but something predatory flickered behind his eyes. "Chloe, there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Answer the question." This was the moment, the collision between truth and deception, between the woman who'd lost everything speaking up and the woman who was about to lose everything staying silent. Vincent glanced around the lounge, assessing exits, calculating odds. Then he smiled, a different smile now, one without warmth or pretense. "I think," he said quietly, reaching for his phone, "I need to make a call. Excuse me." He walked toward the lounge entrance with measured calm, but Fiona's journalist instincts screamed danger. She'd seen this before, the predator's retreat before the strike. "Ms. Anderson," Fiona whispered urgently, her voice raw with adrenaline, "when men like him excuse themselves, they don't come back alone." Chloe's eyes met Fiona's, and in that moment, two women from completely different worlds understood each other perfectly. They were both in danger now. Would you have trusted the bartender, or would you have signed the contract and learned the truth too late? Drop your answer below, because what happens next will shock you. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Fiona spotted two men in dark suits entering the building's lobby. They moved with purpose, scanning the room with professional efficiency. They weren't hotel security, and they were looking for someone. The two men in dark suits moved through the Aurelia's entrance with the fluid precision of people trained to hurt others efficiently. Fiona recognized the signs immediately, the way they scanned the room in overlapping sectors, the subtle bulges under their tailored jackets, the earpieces barely visible beneath styled hair. These weren't bodyguards. They were cleaners, and Vincent had just given them their target. "Ms. Anderson," Fiona said, her voice tight with urgency. She didn't ask permission, didn't explain. She simply grabbed Chloe's wrist and pulled. "We have to move. Now." "What? I'm not—" Chloe started to protest, her CEO instincts rebelling against being manhandled by a bartender. "Those men aren't hotel security." Fiona's grip tightened, her eyes locked on the approaching threat. "They work for Vincent, and we have maybe 30 seconds before they reach this table." Chloe followed Fiona's gaze, saw the men, saw the way other guests instinctively shifted out of their path, saw Vincent near the entrance, phone to his ear, watching with cold satisfaction. Her survival instincts, the same ones that helped her navigate hostile boardrooms and cutthroat negotiations, screamed one word: run. "Maya, call 911, Chloe commanded, already moving. "Tell them there's a threat at the Aurelia. Do it now." Have you ever had to choose between looking crazy and staying alive? Between your dignity and your survival? Chloe had 3 seconds to decide. Trust the trembling bartender, or wait to find out if those men were really dangerous. Fiona pulled Chloe toward the back of the lounge, away from the main entrance. The maitre d' stepped forward, confusion on his face. "Excuse me, you can't—" "Get out of the way!" Fiona shoved past him, dragging Chloe through the service door that staff used to access the kitchen. Behind them, she heard chairs scraping, voices rising in alarm, and the heavy footsteps of men who'd abandoned all pretense of subtlety. The kitchen exploded into chaos as they burst through. "Move! Move!" Fiona shouted, yanking Chloe past the line cooks who stared in shock at the billionaire CEO being dragged through their workspace by a bartender. A tray of appetizers crashed to the floor. The head chef bellowed something in French, probably cursing, but Fiona didn't slow down. She'd memorized every exit in this building during her first week. The old journalist paranoia that had kept her alive. The service hallway stretched ahead, narrow, fluorescent lit, smelling of cleaning chemicals and old grease. Emergency exit signs glowed red at the far end. Behind them, the kitchen door slammed open. "Stop! Security!" one of the men shouted. But Fiona knew better. Real security would be calling for backup, following protocol. These men were chasing. "Stairs!" Fiona gasped, shoving through the metal door marked "Emergency Exit. Alarm will sound." The alarm shrieked to life, a piercing wail that would draw real security, which meant they had minutes, maybe less, before this entire situation spiraled completely out of control. They hit the stairwell running. Chloe kicked off her heels without hesitation, the expensive pumps clattering down concrete steps as both women descended in frantic, barely controlled falls. Fiona's bartender shoes squeaked against the metal edges. Her lungs burned. Her heart hammered so hard she tasted copper. When was the last time you ran for your life? Not jogging, not exercising, actually fleeing because stopping meant something terrible? Your legs burning, your breath ragged, knowing that whoever's behind you is faster, stronger, and has absolutely no intention of letting you reach safety? Floor 18. 17. The footsteps above them echoed like drum beats. "Who are you?" Chloe gasped between breaths, her polished composure shattered into raw survival mode. "I told you, journalist." Fiona's ankle twisted slightly on the landing. She caught herself on the railing, kept moving. "Fiona Mawson. I exposed Vincent 3 years ago. Different name, Victor Leclerc, but same face, same scam." "Why didn't you—" Chloe stumbled, caught herself. "Why didn't you go to the police?" "I tried." Fiona's laugh was bitter and breathless. "He has connections, money, Beat, lawyers who bury evidence, and witnesses who disappear. I published the story anyway. 2 weeks later, my car went off a cliff." 16. 15. "Oh my God," Chloe whispered, the full weight of what she'd almost signed crashing over her. "He destroys companies from inside," Fiona continued, her words coming in sharp bursts. "Steals patents, roots them offshore, liquidates assets, leaves nothing but lawsuits and bankruptcy. 7 companies in 3 years. Hundreds of jobs gone. And now, running down a concrete stairwell in her bare feet, a billionaire CEO finally understood what so many others had learned too late. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like charming businessmen offering exactly what you want. 14. 13. Above them, a door slammed open. The footsteps were getting closer, taking 2, maybe 3 stairs at a time. "They're gaining," Chloe said, her voice steady despite the fear. "What's your plan?" "Ground floor service exit," Fiona panted. "Leads to the alley behind the building. From there—" A hand grabbed the railing 3 floors above. Fiona caught a glimpse of dark fabric, heard voices coordinating in clipped professional tones. "Faster!" she urged, pulling Chloe forward with renewed desperation. 12, 11, 10. Chloe's breath came in ragged gasps, but she kept pace. Whatever else she was a survivor. Someone who'd clawed her way to the top and wouldn't surrender without a fight. "If what you're saying is true," Chloe said between breaths, "you just saved my company. Maybe my life." "If we don't make it out," Fiona shot back, "it won't matter." Dean, 8. The footsteps above echoed closer. A voice crackled through a radio. "Target descending, approaching ground level. Cut them off at the alley exit. They have people waiting outside." Fiona's mind raced through options, calculating exits, weighing risks. They couldn't go to the ground floor service exit. It was compromised. But the parking garage connected to the 3rd sublevel. If they could reach it— "Change of plans," she gasped. "Parking garage, level B3. That's the opposite direction." "Exactly." Sometimes survival isn't about running toward safety. It's about running where your enemies don't expect. Imagine being hunted through a building you don't know, by people who do this professionally, with nowhere to hide and no one to help. They hit the ground floor landing and kept descending, plunging into the sublevels where delivery trucks and staff vehicles parked. The stairwell grew colder, damper. The fluorescent lights flickered with unreliable electricity. B1, B2. The footsteps above paused. Confusion, recalculation. Fiona had bought them maybe 90 seconds. B3. She slammed through the door into the parking garage. The vast concrete space stretched before them, half empty at this hour, filled with shadows and the hum of ventilation systems. Emergency lights cast everything in sickly yellow. "There," Fiona pointed to a delivery van parked near the far exit ramp. "Get behind it. Stay low." They sprinted across oil-stained concrete, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Fiona pulled out her phone with shaking hands as they crouched behind the van, both women breathing so hard it felt like their lungs might burst. She opened the encrypted app she'd sworn never to use again. Typed with trembling fingers to the contact labeled Cipher. "He's here? The Aurelia, Chicago. Sent fixers after witnesses. Need immediate support. We're in parking level B3. The reply came back in 8 seconds. "FBI mobilizing now. Stay hidden. Do not engage. ETA 6 minutes. 6 minutes. 360 seconds. An eternity when people were hunting you." Fiona showed Chloe the screen. "Federal agents are coming. We just have to—" The stairwell door exploded open. 6 minutes to rescue. 2 trained killers in the garage. And nowhere left to run. What would you do? Comment below, because what happens next will test everything these 2 women have left. Vincent's men stepped into the parking garage, scanning methodically. One spoke into his radio. "Level B3, they're here." Fiona's hand found Chloe's in the darkness, squeezing once. And both women held their breath. 6 minutes felt like 6 hours. Fiona and Chloe crouched behind the delivery van in the parking garage's deepest level, every muscle locked in frozen silence. The concrete pressed cold against their backs. The ventilation system's hum did nothing to mask the sound of boots moving methodically across oil-stained floors. Vincent's men weren't rushing. They didn't need to. The garage had exactly 2 exits, both now covered. This was a trap closing slowly, professionally, with the patience of people who'd done this before. Fiona's phone buzzed silently in her palm. She glanced at the screen, shielding the light against her body. ETA 4 minutes. Keep line open for GPS tracking. 4 minutes. 240 seconds. Over there, one of the men called out, his voice bouncing off concrete pillars. Check behind the white van. Footsteps approached their position. Chloe's hand squeezed Fiona's so hard it hurt, but neither woman made a sound. Fiona could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, could taste the metallic edge of pure adrenaline. The footsteps stopped 5 feet away. Have you ever held your breath so long your lungs screamed? Ever pressed yourself against cold concrete, praying that somehow, impossibly, you could become invisible? That's where they were, seconds from being found, with nowhere left to hide. A radio crackled. Vincent wants confirmation. Are they contained? The man near their van paused. Checking now. Then, from somewhere above them, a different sound shattered the silence. Sirens. Multiple sirens, growing louder by the second. What the? The man's radio erupted with overlapping voices. Confusion spreading through Vincent's network like wildfire. FBI! Exit B is blocked. Federal agents at main entrance. He set us up! Abort! Abort! The footsteps that had been hunting them suddenly reversed direction, panic replacing precision. The men weren't hunting anymore. They were fleeing. Fiona's encrypted phone buzzed. Building surrounded. Stay put. But Chloe was already moving, pulling Fiona toward the exit ramp. We're not staying in this concrete tomb one more second. Come on. They emerged from the parking garage into chaos, painted in red and blue light. The Aurelia's elegant facade was transformed into a crime scene. FBI vehicles blocked every exit. Tactical teams in dark windbreakers swarmed the entrances, and the guests who'd been sipping champagne minutes ago now clustered on the sidewalk in confused, designer-clad huddles. Fiona and Chloe stayed in the shadows of the alley across the street, watching the operation unfold with breathless disbelief. Through the Aurelia's glass entrance, Fiona saw Vincent being escorted out by 2 federal agents. His hands were cuffed behind his back, his expensive suit rumpled, his face no longer wearing that polished charm, just cold, calculated fury. Behind him, 3 more men in handcuffs, his fixers, his network, all walking into federal custody under the weight of evidence they'd never seen coming. When was the last time you watched justice actually happen in real time? Not a courtroom months later, not a news story with carefully edited clips, but the actual moment when someone who thought they were untouchable realized they were wrong. I need to call my lawyers, Vincent was saying, his accent thicker now under stress. You have no grounds. We have plenty of grounds, Mr. Leclerc, an FBI agent replied, holding up an evidence bag containing the flash drive. Or should I say, Mr. Victor Leclerc, you're wanted by Interpol for fraud, embezzlement, corporate espionage, and about 15 other charges across 4 countries. You have the right to remain silent. The words faded as they loaded him into a black SUV. Fiona exhaled, truly exhaled, for the first time since she'd heard Vincent's voice in that lounge. The breath left her body in a shuddering rush that felt like collapsing and standing up at the same time. You okay? Chloe asked softly, her hand still gripping Fiona's arm like a lifeline. I don't know, Fiona whispered honestly. Ask me tomorrow. They watched as FBI techs photographed the lounge, bagged evidence, interviewed witnesses. Maya, Chloe's assistant, was speaking with an agent, gesturing emphatically toward the table where the contract still sat unsigned. "That flash drive," another agent was saying into a radio. "It's a gold mine. Dozens of fraudulent mergers, shell companies, offshore accounts. We've got enough here to dismantle his entire network." Chloe turned to Fiona, her expression unreadable in the flashing emergency lights. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but weighted with something Fiona couldn't quite name: gratitude, shock, disbelief. "You just dismantled a billion-dollar scam with a whisper." 6 words. "Ma, you have to go. Now." That's all it took to stop a predator who'd destroyed dozens of companies and hundreds of lives. Sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truth. Fiona shook her head, a bitter smile touching her lips. "I tried to dismantle it 3 years ago with a 20-page expose and nearly died. Tonight I couldn't watch it happen again." "My company," Chloe said slowly, the full weight of what almost happened settling over her like a shroud. "My patents, my technology, everything I built, he would have taken it all. In 6 months, I would have been fighting lawsuits while he liquidated my life's work from some offshore tax haven." She paused, her voice cracking slightly. "You saved everything." "I almost didn't," Fiona admitted. "I almost stayed quiet, played it safe." "But you didn't." Chloe's eyes glistened in the emergency lights. "When it mattered, you spoke." Across the street, an FBI agent emerged from the Aurelia, scanning the crowd with purposeful focus. He spoke into his radio. "We need to locate the witness who first identified Leclerc. Bartender, name tag said Fiona. Anyone seen her?" Fiona's body went rigid. Imagine finally exposing the truth that nearly killed you, finally seeing justice served, and knowing that the spotlight will destroy the quiet life you've spent years rebuilding. Stay and testify, or disappear again. "Fiona Mo," Maya was saying, pointing toward the service entrance. "New hire. Been here 2 weeks. She's the one who warned us." "I have to go," Fiona whispered, already backing deeper into the alley's shadows. "What? No!" Chloe grabbed her wrist. "You're a hero. You need to give a statement. Get protection." "Protection didn't work last time." Fiona gently pulled free. "The moment my name hits an FBI report, it becomes public record. Vincent's network is bigger than just him. There are people who'd pay a lot of money to ensure I don't testify." "Then I'll protect you," Chloe said fiercely. "I'll hire security, lawyers, whatever you need." "You can't protect me from becoming visible again." Fiona's smile was sad but certain. "I've been invisible for 3 years. It's the only reason I'm still alive." "So that's it? You just vanish? After everything?" Fiona reached into her pocket and pulled out a napkin from the Aurelia, borrowing a pen from Chloe's blazer. She scribbled a number quickly. "Encrypted line. Untraceable. If you ever need someone who sees danger before anyone else does." She pressed the napkin into Chloe's palm. "Call me. Would you disappear to stay alive, or would you step into the light and testify, knowing it might cost you everything? Drop your answer below, because Fiona's choice is about to change both their lives forever." "Fiona Mo!" an agent called, moving through the crowd. "Anyone know where she went?" But the alley where Fiona had stood moments before was empty, except for shadows and the distant wail of sirens. Chloe looked down at the napkin in her hand, at the hastily scrawled number that represented a ghost's lifeline. When she looked up again, Fiona had vanished into Chicago's night. A bartender turned journalist turned savior who'd stopped a $150 million trap with 6 whispered words and then disappeared before anyone could say thank you. Inside the Aurelia, agents were already asking questions. Where's the woman who identified Leclerc? We need her statement. But Chloe simply folded the napkin carefully and tucked it into her blazer pocket, right over her heart. She was never here, Chloe said quietly, to no one in particular. And that, she decided, was the kindest truth she could tell. The cafe on Chicago's South Side was the kind of place billionaires never visited. Chipped Formica counters, mismatched chairs, a handwritten menu board advertising coffee for $2 and hope for free. It smelled like burnt espresso and second chances. Fiona wiped down the counter for the 3rd time that morning, her movements automatic, meditative. The name tag pinned to her apron read, Lily, her 3rd identity in as many years. Another ghost. Another life built from nothing. The bell above the door chimed. Fiona glanced up with her well-practiced service smile, ready to take another order for black coffee and toast, and froze. Chloe Anderson stood in the doorway, impossibly out of place in her tailored Burberry coat and designer heels. She looked like a magazine cover that had accidentally wandered into a thrift store. Every head in the cafe turned to stare, but Chloe's eyes were locked on Fiona. "Hi," Chloe said softly, approaching the counter like she was approaching a wild animal that might bolt. "I'll take a coffee, black, and a few minutes of your time." Fiona's hands trembled as she reached for a mug. "How did you—" "The encrypted number you gave me routes through proxy servers, but your last location ping came from this neighborhood." Chloe's smile was gentle, apologetic. "I have very good cybersecurity people. They're discreet. No one knows I'm here except me." 3 weeks ago, a bartender whispered 6 words that saved a billionaire's empire. Now, that billionaire was standing in a South Side cafe looking for the ghost who'd disappeared into the night. Some debts can't be repaid with money. Some gratitude demands to be spoken face to face. Fiona poured the coffee with unsteady hands, set it down, then glanced at her manager, a kind older man who asked no questions about her past. "Tony, can I take my break?" "Take your time, Lily," he said, though his eyes flickered with curiosity at the woman who clearly didn't belong in his cafe. They sat at a corner booth, away from the window. Fiona wrapped her hands around a mug of tea she didn't want, needing something to hold on to. Chloe sat across from her, studying her with an intensity that made Fiona want to disappear all over again. "You look different without the bartender vest," Chloe said. "That's kind of the point." Fiona's voice came out hoarse. "New place, new name, new life, same old pattern." "Vincent Leclerc's arrest made international headlines," Chloe said, pulling out her phone and scrolling through saved articles. "Interpol had been tracking him for years, but could never get solid evidence. That flash drive you identified contained connections to 47 fraudulent mergers across 11 countries. Billions in stolen assets." She turned the phone toward Fiona. Headlines blazed across the screen. "International fraud ring dismantled in Chicago. Venture capitalist arrested for billion-dollar scam. The broker unmasked. How one man destroyed dozens of companies." Fiona scanned the articles, her chest tightening with each paragraph. It was vindication, 3 years too late, but vindication nonetheless. The story she'd tried to tell was finally being heard. "They're calling you the anonymous whistleblower," Chloe continued. "FBI won't confirm your identity, which I'm guessing you requested." "Demanded," Fiona corrected quietly. "Part of my cooperation agreement. No name, no testimony, no public record. Smart. Chloe set down her phone. But that's not why I came. What do you say to someone who saved everything you built? How do you repay a debt that can't be measured in money? Chloe had spent 3 weeks trying to find the right words. Now, sitting across from a woman who'd lost everything to tell the truth, she realized words weren't enough. Chloe reached into her coat and pulled out a cream-colored envelope, thick with expensive paper. She set it on the table between them like a bridge between two worlds. Anderson Dynamics' stock price jumped 18% after the story broke, Chloe said. Not because of the scandal, but because the media narrative focused on how we identified the threat before signing. We're being called the company that values integrity over profit. Business journals want to interview me about our revolutionary vetting process. Fiona's laugh was bitter. Your revolutionary vetting process was a traumatized bartender with PTSD and trust issues. Exactly. Chloe pushed the envelope closer. Which is why I'm creating a new division. Cyber ethics and threat assessment. Someone who looks at deals, partnerships, mergers, not from a financial angle, but from a truth angle. Someone who asks the questions everyone else is afraid to ask. Fiona stared at the envelope like it might bite her. What is this? A job offer. Director-level position. Competitive salary, full benefits, security detail if you want it. You'd report directly to me. Chloe, open it. Fiona's hands shook as she lifted the envelope's flap and pulled out the letter. Her eyes scanned the details, the title, the salary figure that made her breath catch, the signing bonus that was more money than she'd earned in the past 3 years combined. But it was the final paragraph that broke something open inside her. This position is designed for someone who has lost everything by telling the truth and is brave enough to do it again. Someone who sees danger before anyone else does. Someone who understands that courage isn't about having power. It's about using truth when silence is safer. The words blurred as unexpected tears filled Fiona's eyes. For 3 years, Fiona had been invisible, serving, hiding, surviving. She'd convinced herself that invisibility was safety, that silence was wisdom. But what if the thing she'd been running from was actually the thing the world needed most? I don't belong in your world anymore, Fiona whispered, setting down the letter. I'm not that person. I can't be her again. You already are her. Chloe's voice was gentle but firm. 3 weeks ago, you risked everything to stop me from signing that contract. You didn't have to. You could have stayed invisible, but you spoke anyway. And almost got us both killed. But you didn't, because you're good at what you do, seeing the truth others miss, trusting your instincts, acting when action matters. Chloe leaned forward, her eyes intense. The world needs people like you, Fiona. People who see danger before anyone else does. Not hiding in cafes serving coffee, but protecting companies, employees, families from predators like Vincent. Fiona wiped her eyes roughly. What if I fail? What if I can't do it anymore? Then you fail, Chloe said simply. But at least you'll fail trying to do something that matters instead of hiding from your own courage. 6 words changed Chloe's life. Now Chloe was offering Fiona something more precious than money. A chance to reclaim the identity she'd lost, to stop running from who she really was. The cafe hummed with ordinary life around them, students studying, workers grabbing quick lunches, people living small, quiet lives that felt safe because they demanded nothing. Fiona had spent 3 years trying to disappear into that safety, but safety wasn't the same as living. She looked down at the job offer, at the future Chloe was handing her like a fragile gift. Then she looked up at the woman who'd trusted a bartender's whispered warning when every logical instinct said not to. "If I do this," Fiona said slowly, "I need guarantees, security protocols, anonymity for as long as possible, and the authority to shut down any deal I think is dangerous, no questions asked." Chloe's smile broke like sunrise. "Done. All of it. You'll have full autonomy and my complete support. I'll probably see threats everywhere. I'll be paranoid. Difficult. Good. Paranoia kept both of us alive 3 weeks ago." Fiona picked up the letter again, reading it one more time as if the words might change. But they didn't. The offer was real. The chance was real. And for the first time in 3 years, Fiona felt something she'd thought was dead. Hope. She looked up at Chloe and smiled, a small, genuine smile that felt like cracking open after a long winter. "When do I start?" Sometimes redemption doesn't look like triumph. Sometimes it looks like a job offer in a South Side cafe. Sometimes courage is choosing to be visible again after years of hiding. What would you choose? Safety or purpose? Comment below. Chloe reached across the table and squeezed Fiona's hand. "Tomorrow. But first, we're getting you out of this cafe and into an office that doesn't smell like burnt espresso." "Hey," Tony called from behind the counter, grinning. "My espresso isn't that bad." Both women laughed. The kind of laughter that releases pressure, that acknowledges absurdity, that signals the beginning of something new. Fiona stood, untying her apron with hands that no longer trembled. She folded it carefully, set it on the counter, and walked toward the door with Chloe. She didn't look back. 6 months after a bartender whispered 6 words that stopped a $150 million trap, Fiona Mosen walked through the glass doors of Anderson Dynamics headquarters wearing a tailored charcoal suit and her real name. No more hiding, no more aprons, no more ghosts. The lobby stretched before her like a cathedral of chrome and ambition. 40-foot ceilings, waterfall walls, and the quiet hum of an empire built on innovation. Employees moved with purposeful energy, their security badges gleaming under architectural lighting. This was power. This was permanence. And somehow, impossibly, Fiona belonged here now. "Ms. Mosen," the receptionist said warmly, "Ms. Anderson is expecting you in the executive conference room, 17th floor." Ms. Mosen. Not Lily, not Fiona Mo. Her real name, spoken aloud without fear for the first time in 3 years. It still felt like learning to breathe underwater. Have you ever walked back into a version of yourself you thought was dead? Ever reclaimed an identity you'd buried because using it meant risking everything? That's what redemption feels like. Not comfortable, not easy, but undeniably real. The elevator climbed smoothly, each floor a heartbeat of progress. Fiona caught her reflection in the polished doors. Sharp blazer, hair pulled back professionally, eyes that still carried shadows, but no longer looked hunted. She barely recognized herself. The doors opened to the 17th floor, where Anderson Dynamics' executive offices occupied prime real estate with views of Lake Michigan stretching to the horizon. But Fiona turned left, toward a different door, one with her name etched in brushed steel. Fiona Mosen, Director, Cyber Ethics and Threat Assessment. She pushed open the door to her office, her actual office, with floor-to-ceiling windows, a desk made of reclaimed wood, and walls she'd been given permission to personalize. Most were still bare, but behind her desk, centered perfectly, hung a single framed quote in elegant script. Truth is rarely comfortable, but it's always necessary. Her own words, from the article that destroyed her career and nearly killed her. The same words that had haunted her for 3 years. But now, they didn't feel like a curse. They felt like a compass. Fiona set down her bag and stood at the window, looking out over Chicago's sprawling skyline. Somewhere out there, Vincent Leclerc sat in a federal prison awaiting trial on 47 counts of fraud. His network had collapsed like a house of cards, each arrest revealing another, each confession uncovering deeper corruption. And it had all started with 6 whispered words in an upscale lounge. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Got a minute?" Chloe stood in the doorway, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Figured that you might need this before the board presentation." Fiona accepted the cup gratefully.
Remind me again why I agreed to present to your board of directors about implementing ethics protocols they're going to hate? Because you're the only person I trust to tell them uncomfortable truths they need to hear.
Chloe's smile was warm but knowing. Also because you're contractually obligated, and I pay you very well. There's that. Fiona laughed, genuine laughter that still surprised her with its ease. When was the last time someone paid you to tell the truth instead of punishing you for it? When did you last feel valued for the very thing the world told you to hide? Over the past 6 months, Fiona had built something unprecedented, a division dedicated to asking the questions no one wanted asked. She'd reviewed 17 major deals, killed 3 that smelled wrong, and saved Anderson Dynamics from 2 partnerships that would have become legal nightmares. The board hated her, the legal team feared her, and Chloe trusted her completely. "The Vincent Leclerc case closed yesterday," Chloe said, settling into the chair across from Fiona's desk. 40-year sentence. No parole. His entire network dismantled. Interpol recovered over $2 billion in stolen assets. Fiona absorbed the news quietly, feeling something shift inside her chest. Not quite closure, but close enough. Good. Better than good. Chloe leaned forward. 15 companies are getting their patents back. Hundreds of families are receiving restitution. All because you recognized a voice and chose to speak. "I almost didn't," Fiona admitted. "I was terrified." "Courage isn't the absence of fear," Chloe said gently. "It's acting despite it." 6 months ago, Fiona was invisible, serving champagne to people who looked through her like furniture. Now she was sitting in an executive office, drinking coffee with a billionaire who'd become something unexpected. A friend. Sometimes the whisper that saves someone else ends up saving you, too. "Actually," Chloe continued, standing with renewed purpose, "I have a surprise for you. Clear your afternoon. I have the board presentation at 3, rescheduled. Come on." 20 minutes later, they stood on the rooftop of the Aurelia, the same exclusive lounge where everything had changed. But the space felt different now, not threatening, but transformed. The view of Chicago's skyline stretched before them, the autumn sunset painting the buildings in gold and amber. Chloe had reserved the private terrace, just the 2 of them, and a bottle of champagne that probably cost more than Fiona's monthly rent used to. "Why here?" Fiona asked, though she already knew. "Because this is where your courage gave me back my company, my legacy, my life." Chloe poured 2 glasses, the champagne catching the dying light. "I wanted to close the loop, to stand here not as strangers in crisis, but as partners who survived it. Imagine returning to the place where your life shattered and finding it transformed, not by changing the location, but by changing who you are when you stand there. That's what healing looks like. They stood at the railing, glasses in hand, the city breathing below them in its endless evening rhythm. Chloe lifted her glass. You saved more than my company, Fiona. You reminded me that courage isn't born from power, it's born from choice. That the most important voices aren't always the loudest. That integrity matters more than any deal, any profit, any empire. Fiona's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. She lifted her own glass, meeting Chloe's eyes. And you gave me back my name, my purpose. You showed me that the truth I thought had destroyed me actually defined me. They touched glasses, the crystal ringing softly in the evening air. Two uncomfortable truths, Chloe said. And necessary courage, Fiona added. They drank, and for a moment, silence settled between them. Comfortable, earned, profound. Then Fiona spoke quietly, her words carrying across the rooftop like a prayer. Sometimes, all it takes is one whisper to stop a storm. Chloe nodded, looking out over the city they'd both learned to navigate in completely different ways. And sometimes the person the world overlooked becomes the one who saves it. Ma, you have to go, now. 6 words from a bartender. 6 words that dismantled a billion-dollar scam, saved an empire, and gave 2 women back their futures. Never underestimate the power of speaking truth when silence is safer. Never dismiss the voice that trembles but speaks anyway. The sun dipped below the horizon, and Chicago's lights began their nightly awakening. A million stories unfolding in glass and steel. A million choices being made in boardrooms and back alleys. A million chances to choose courage over comfort. Fiona Mosen stood on that rooftop, no longer invisible, no longer afraid, and felt something she hadn't felt in years, whole. Ready for tomorrow? Chloe asked. Fiona smiled, genuine, unguarded, free. Ready. They turned from the view and walked back inside together, leaving behind the ghosts of who they used to be and stepping into the future they'd both earned. This is what happens when you choose truth over silence. When you risk everything to save a stranger. When you whisper instead of shout and change everything anyway. If stories like this remind you that courage comes in unexpected forms, that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, and that one voice really can make a difference, you're exactly where you belong.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine, so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.